what you should note is that the methods that are used to divide whole numbers by whole numbers are also used to divide decimals. For example, suppose you have whole numbers 8 and 4, and suppose you want to do the division of these two numbers, 8 divided by 4. Here are the four methods that can be used to do this. The first one is this. You write 8 and you put this division symbol, you divide by 4, and it is known that 8 divided by 4 is 2. Or you can write 8 over 4. This becomes the denominator and this is the numerator, and when you divide you get 2. The other method is what we call the long division method. In fact, this is the most common method that is used in dividing numbers. So 8 divided by 4, this is 8 divided by 4, and you can see 4 gets 8 twice, and when you multiply 2 to 4 you get 8. Subtracting 8 from 8 you get 0. Or you can use this other method. So you put this symbol, you write 8 here, 2 here, and 2 gets 8 4 times. Now whatever method is used here can also be applied to decimals. Let us see how this applies to decimals. And before we go to how that applies to decimals, you should also note this. The rules to divide decimals depends on which numbers are getting involved in the process of division of the decimals. The rules are therefore dependent on whether the division process is of a decimal by a whole number by a decimal by a decimal by a power of 10, a decimal by a fraction by a decimal. Now let us move on and see how this works. Let us talk about division of a decimal by a whole number. This is a decimal and this is a whole number, 0.8 divided by 4. You can use the horizontal method, and 4 to 0 is 0, you put a dot, and then 4 gets to 2 twice, so this is 0.2. Or you can write this as the numerator, 0.8, and 4 as a denominator, and when you divide you do the same as what you did here. 4 to 0 is 0, 4 to 8 is twice, so you write 0.2. Just before you write 2 you put the dot. Or you apply this, 4 to 0 is 0, then you multiply 0 to 4, you get 4, you get 0. And then again you think how many times does 4 get to 8? It is twice. Multiplying you get 8, subtracting you get 4. Or otherwise you can do it this way. 4 to 0 is 0, 4 to 8 is 2. Just before you write 2 you put the dot, because there is a dot here at the middle. Otherwise you may apply this method. That is when you divide a decimal by a whole number. Division of a whole number by a decimal. Here the rule is first to convert the denominator to a whole number, and then you divide just as you did in the previous examples. For example, 8 is a whole number divided by this decimal, 0.4. Better way you can do this is to write 8 above 0.4, and then you look, the number of decimal places is 1, you multiply the denominator by 10 and the numerator by 10. 8 times 10 is 80, and 0.4 times 10 you get 4. You add 0 and then you count the number of decimal places, 1, you put a dot there. This is equivalent to 8 divided by 4, and it is 20. So 8 divided by 0.4 can be equivalent to 80 divided by 4, which is 20. or you can write it this way as a fraction and it is 20, or you can use the long division method, this one. 4 to 8 is 2, 2 to 4 is 8, and then 4 to 0 is 0, and this is 0. Subtracting, you get 0, so this is 20. Or you can apply this method: 4 to 8, 2, 4 to 0, 0. So that is when you divide a whole number by a decimal. Let us talk about division of a decimal by a decimal. You have 0.4 divided by 0.4. Here, the rule is to convert the denominator into a whole number, but whatever you do to the denominator should be done to the numerator. So, because there is one decimal place here, you multiply to 10 in the denominator, and you multiply to 10 in the numerator. So when you multiply this, you get 80, and you count the number of decimal places is 1. You move the dot 1 decimal point, you get 8. The same applies to here. 40, you move the decimal point 1 step, so it becomes 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 0.08 divided by 0.4 is equivalent to 8 divided by 4, which is 2. Or you can write it as a fraction like this, or you can use the long division method like this, or you can use this method to divide. When you do division of decimal by a power of 10, when we talk of power of 10, we are talking of numbers such as 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, 100,000, and million, and so on. Those numbers that are multiples of 10, like this. So when you divide decimals by whole numbers which are multiples of 10, it is actually the simplest form of dividing decimals, because what you do is just moving the decimals towards the left hand side depending on the number of zeros that are in the divisor. So in this case, you'll move the dot one step towards the left, and it is going to be 0.08. This one, you'll move the dot 2 steps towards this side, it is going to be 0.008. Same applies to the other divisions that we have here. So let us look at how this is done. Take this example here, that is 0.8 divided by 10. Looking up here, you can use both the three methods. Here it is 0.08. The dot has been moved one step to the left. The same applies to here, and you can see how that dot moves to the left by looking up here. Dividing 0.8 by 10 is like you take 10 to 0, it gets 0 times. 0 times 10 is 0. When you subtract, you get 0 here. You drop 8 and you put a dot here. So how many times 10 get to 8 is 0, and then 0 to 10 is 0. Subtracting, you get 8, and then you drop 0 here, and then 10 to 8 is 8 times that 8 to 10 is 8. Subtracting, you get 0. So in the end, you get 0.08. It means this dot has been moved one step towards the left, because 0.8 is divided by 10, which has got only 1 0. The same result will apply here. So let us look at another example. In fact, those are some of the rules that we can speak on how you can divide decimals, but you should work on these other concepts that are yet to be discussed. A division of a decimal by a fraction, it is not discussed here, and also division of a fraction